Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. The Jonathan Smith era getting kicked off for this Michigan State program, carrying out their spring game Saturday afternoon. Want to hop on, talk about a few of my takeaways and storylines from that game. Got a chance to watch it late Saturday night, watched it again Sunday morning. Really excited to get into this one. The Michigan State fans know that I think Jonathan Smith was an absolute home run hire in terms of not only winning games in 2024, but Jonathan Smith's a guy that he's going to build this Michigan State program the right way. So although you are going to win games in 2024, I think this team is going to continue to get better over the years. Really excited to get into this one. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys, to the Michigan State fans. It's going to be a very exciting next couple of weeks. I expect Jonathan Smith to be very active in the transfer portal over the next couple of weeks. We'll continue to break down those commitments. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, would love to hear some of your feedback, some of your takeaways in the comments section. I always learn a ton from you guys, so would love to hear from y'all. And without further ado, let's get into this one. I think we should start with evaluating the quarterback position. Aidan Chiles. Okay, I think a prerequisite to this conversation is that the conditions yesterday afternoon were not conducive to an explosive passing attack. It was windy. It was cold. My biggest takeaway, Aidan Chiles significantly elevates the ceiling of what this Michigan State offense can be. By far the most talented quarterback Michigan State has had in a very long time, not only in terms of what he can do with his arm talent, but athletically, extending plays, using his legs. Michigan State has a playmaker at the quarterback spot. And we all know if you want to win a lot of football games at the college football level, you need that kind of quarterback. And I think when you look at Aidan Chiles, what he did Saturday afternoon, my biggest takeaway was he's got a lot of arm talent and he can make a lot of different throws. I think you start with that throw right up to the seam to a guy like Foster, but you also saw him layer the football into Nathan Carter on that wheel route. A lot of different throws that Aidan Chiles is able to make. Obviously, the athleticism kind of factoring in as well. You have a quarterback that you can do so many different things with. Ask him to make a lot of throws. Ask him to do a lot with his athleticism. You take a checkbox to Aidan Chiles as a quarterback, and you just start saying check, 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 check. There is not much that Aidan Chiles can't do at a very high level operating this offense. And I think the next question you want to kind of get into is the wide receiver room, where I thought you had some guys step up. This is a position that I expect Michigan State to add to in the transfer portal. I know they had a few visitors this weekend as well. A few of my takeaways, you didn't have Antonio Gates Jr. suited up, I believe. He was a guy that you read the spring practice notes and say, we kind of feel good about what he can be in 2024. Montori Foster Jr., I thought had a phenomenal game, was able to work vertically down the field, create separation over the middle of the field. Nick Marsh, an early enrollee, true freshman, a kid that should be going to prom right now, he's going to play a lot for Michigan State in 2024. And then you look at Nick Marsh, such a threat down the field with his long speed, but also physicality, a guy that we covered coming out of high school. He's another box checker and a guy that's a playmaker at that wide receiver position. You want to see Michigan State get some more difference makers in that wide receiver room, but I think you came away from that Saturday spring practice or spring game, I should say, and you're saying, hey, we got a couple wide receivers that can really make some things happen down the field at the running back position. I am a massive Nate Carter fan. Not only what he can do out of the backfield, but what he can do carrying the rock. Always seems to make the first person miss. Very, very physical running back as well. And I think the question that you have is, what is the depth going to look like? I think Michigan State probably going to add not one, but two running backs to that running back room. True freshman Tulis, thought he looked really good as well. I probably expect Jalen Berger to transfer out, a guy that seems to be phased out of that Michigan State running back room. But I think Michigan State is going to have a really balanced offense where you're going to be able to run the football, but now you have a quarterback that can attack downfield and kind of add a two-dimensional, a lot of different ways, I guess you'd say, that Michigan State can attack opposing defenses. I think you feel solid about what the run game can be. You got some playmakers down the field, and obviously Aidan Chiles with his athleticism represents a little bit more juice in terms of how Michigan State can attack opposing defenses. On the offensive line, I think my takeaway was You still want to continue to add depth to this offensive line. You make no mistake about it. That's how Jonathan Smith is going to build this program. You look at the success he had at Oregon State. It was along the line of scrimmage, right? In a Pac-12 conference where everyone's pretty much playing 7-on-7 out there, Oregon State was a Big Ten team in the Pac-12 and won a lot of football games because they were just better along the line of scrimmage than any other team in the Pac-12. I don't think you're going to see an elite offensive line year one, but if you're a Michigan State fan, you can bet on this offensive line continuing to get better as Jonathan Smith runs this program. I think it was solid in a unit that I'm always going to have confidence in if Jonathan Smith is coaching this team, but it's going to continue to get better. And if you're Michigan State, I think you feel pretty good about where this offensive line will continue to kind of take steps heading into 2024. Now, you go to the defensive side of the football, and I'll say this. I think the front seven for Michigan State, I think that's a damn good unit. I thought the two transfers coming from Middle Tennessee State and Georgia Tech both played really good. We know what Derek Harmon can be on the inside. He's one of the better interior defensive linemen that you see in college football. You have some other guys, Jordan Hall, getting involved at that edge rusher spot on those third and long spots. Really, really intrigued by that. And you look at Michigan State, especially the staff that Jonathan Smith brought over, some of these coordinators, they're elite at using their talent the right ways. And a guy like Jordan Hall, we all know, one of the best linebackers in the Big Ten, but a guy that can get used in a lot of different ways. Love to see Jordan Hall kind of getting used and put in positions that really let him be successful. I am really high on this front seven for Michigan State. And then you look at the back end and say, you feel decent about a guy like Malik Spencer, Dylan Tatum. My take on the Michigan State secondaries, it's a young group, right? A lot of guys only going into year 2 or year 3, but that group is extremely talented. And you look at John Smith and the staff that he's bringing over and say, yeah, those guys did a really good job maximizing the talent that they had at Oregon State, something that Michigan State just did not do well enough under Mel Tucker, and say, if Jonathan Smith and this defensive coaching staff can get the best out of this defensive back room, this is going to be a solid secondary. Again, a weak point for Michigan State over the last couple of years. You got guys back there, right? Malik Spencer, Dylan Tatum, really, really talented guys. Now you want to see them put it together going into 2024. I came away and say, yeah, the defense maybe did not necessarily win the spring game, but I do really like some of the pieces that they have on the defensive side of the football. The last conversation that I want to get into is kind of talking about the positions that we expect Michigan State to maybe add to over the next couple of weeks. I think first, the running back and wide receiver room. I think Jonathan Smith's going to continue to try to get as much talent around Aiden Childs. Really like what you have with Nate Carter. You probably want to go add one more running back that has a lot of experience. They have a guy in Chris Paul coming in from Georgia. Massive fan of Chris Paul. A guy that didn't get a ton of opportunity for the Georgia Bulldogs, was a massive fan of him coming out of the state of Texas as a recruit, and a guy that I think will play a lot of football for Michigan State in 2024. The wide receiver room, you have a guy like Dawson coming in, previously Auburn, then Colorado. I look at that Michigan State wide receiver room and say, you want some more difference makers for Aiden Childs to get the football to. You want more guys. When you look at Jonathan Smith and the success that he had at Oregon State, it was with a lot of guys that could operate in space. And I think when you go into 2024, you want some wide receivers that, hey, Jonathan Smith is going to scheme up some plays that get wide receivers the football in space. You want those wide receivers to be difference makers. Guys like Silas Bolden that he had at Oregon State. Those are the kind of wide receivers that you want in this Michigan State offense. I expect Michigan State to get some of those guys. And then on the defensive side of the football, I like the pieces. You might see some additions at certain spots. You know Jonathan Smith's going to prioritize both sides of the line of scrimmage. This team, I think, is going to look a lot different going into 2024 into the fall than it did right now. I expect some names to leave, but I certainly expect a lot of names to come into this Michigan State program. Going to be a very fun next couple of weeks to track what Michigan State is doing in the transfer portal. We'll obviously keep you guys updated with that. Again, appreciate y'all rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section as well. And we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.